All right. Thanks a lot for the introduction. Thank you guys for joining me for this talk. As mentioned, my name is Michel. I'm the lead scientist for wearable sensors at Dätwyler in Switzerland. And I'm going to talk about wearable sensors and XR and how we might push these technologies towards mass adoption. Excuse me, I'm a little bit under the weather. I'm really trying to make it through this talk, but if there is some coughing, I hope you can excuse that. Before I dive into the topic, full disclosure, I'm no expert in the extended reality world. My background is in biosignal research and more specifically in neuroscience. Did my PhD at the ETH of Zurich and then a postdoc in Singapore. I did have one touch point with virtual reality when I used the Oculus Rift development kit 2 back in 2015, I think, for one of my research projects where I investigated the effect of different virtual environments on memory performance. When I, however, look at the last couple of stages of my career, I can say that I have been trying for a couple of years now to really get wearable or biosignals in wearables to the masses. On one hand, I worked during my postdoc on the application side, so how the human body reacts to different urban environments, and we measured that with brain activity and other signals from the body, so how your skin reacts to different environments. And we try to see if we can use those insights to optimize and to personalize navigation tasks in the real world. I then moved into industry to a Swiss company called Idun Technologies, where we aimed at developing the first commercially available product that uses earbuds to measure your brain activity. And now at Dätwyler, we are developing high-quality biosignal sensors for wearables. And if you see this lined up, you see that I've worked on the application side, so really on the question, what kind of insights can we get from wearable sensors? On the being part of building a commercial product, up to the point where I'm now, where we try to provide the best possible components for such wearable devices. When I talk about wearables, I know that there are different interpretations. I mean devices that are worn on the body, that measure continuously human activity and do that via vital or biosignals. Wearable sensors are the kind of sensors that we use to measure those signals. And in this talk, I want to focus on electrophysiological sensors or EXG sensors. So sensors that detect your electrical activity from a body. As most of you probably are aware, our bodies and our cells of our bodies, they generate electrical fields and electrical signals naturally. And we can measure those electrical fields by placing sensors onto our body, so non-invasively. And depending on where we place those sensors, we can actually collect different kinds of biosignals. For example, ECG, a very popular one, measures brain activity. EOG is basically measuring your eye movements. EMG measures your muscle activity, so tension, relaxation. And EEG to measure your brain activity. This slide I like because it kind of gives you a glimpse of the hype around the wearable tech and the VR or XR tech a decade ago. So wearable tech will change your life, and VR is about to change the world. And while obviously these then emerging technologies really had an impact on our everyday lives and on the world, I still think that at that time we all thought that the impact would be even greater as it is today. For this talk, I'm a little bit excluding the Apple Watch because, yes, that really has reached mass adoption since it was launched. So 10 years ago, a big hype across around these technologies. Where do we stand today? For this, I wanted to look at this Gartner hype cycle overlaid with the innovation adoption curve. And if we place the extended reality technologies up for debate on this, please share your opinion. But experts say that VR and AR kind of probably have reached the level of mass adoption that we see today. And when I say AR and VR, I mean pure AR and VR. Mixed reality, however, is still kind of in the beginning of the adoption phase. But AR and VR, as I mentioned, might stay in more niche markets and not consumer mass adoption. If we contrast this with EXG sensors for wearables, I would argue ECG, so heart rate activity, is the furthest along these curves. So we have right now the Apple Watch, the Garmin, Samsung, Polar watches. They all nowadays have capabilities of actually measuring your ECG. And I think more watches will embed that technology in the future. EMG, or the detection of your muscle activity, I think is the next one in line. When I did this graph, I very strongly had the Meta Orion project in mind, because if I would have given this talk a couple of weeks ago before the Meta Connect, I definitely wouldn't have placed EMG so close to basically increase in the adoption. But with this technology being launched or close to being launched, I think it will be very interesting to see what this technology can do, or what these sensors can do. EEG, or the measurement of brain activity, as much as it hurts for me as a neuroscientist to say this, but I think there's still a way to come down from this peak of inflated expectations that we have around this technology. It's amazing to me how many people still think that we can actually do some sort of mind reading with EEG sensors, which we unfortunately cannot, or at least very, very far away from that. And finally, EOG sensors, or the detection of eye movement. I'm not aware of many devices that actually use these kinds of sensors. That's why I placed them a little bit in the beginning, so not a lot of adoption yet. However, I will talk about this a bit later. As soon as EXG sensors will be embedded in earbuds and smart glasses, I'm sure that EOG will be one of the first sensors, EXG sensors, to be applied. And that's also because EOG signals are actually very strong and usually very robust to measure. This kind of hints into where I see the future. Basically, embed EXG sensors into extended reality technologies. What we get on the one hand is advanced insights about the users, but we can also get neural interfaces, basically by using the EXG sensors and EXG signals to control your extended realities. Now, while you might disagree on the placement of these different technologies along these curves, I hope that we can agree that although these technologies are at different stages, most of them kind of are still haven't yet reached the adoption, the mass adoption that we were all hoping for, or still are hoping for. So I think there is still a lot of potential in that sense. So how can a new technology reach mass adoption? For this question, I wanted to use the PPG sensor as an example, as a very successful example of a wearable sensor. So today, basically every smartwatch, but also other wearables like headbands, rings, use these little green and red lights that shine through your skin and basically give you information about your blood flow, and then in turn about your heart rate. So what made PPG so successful or so popular? To answer this question, I went into literature, and I found two very nice reviews that aim to answer exactly this question. And what you see here is just a collection of features that were mentioned in these articles. So they measure, they mention comfort, cost, integration, clinical validation, and more. And when we then try to categorize these features, we actually end up quite nicely with factors from the so-called unified theory of acceptance and use of technology. What I find very, very interesting about this theory is that it states that the performance expectancy, effort expectancy, social influence, hedonic motivation, and price value, they influence your intent to use a new technology. Only your habits and the facilitating conditions around this technology, they have a direct influence on the actual use beyond the behavioral intention. And I think this is something that is quite often overlooked when we build new technology. So we tend to focus on the performance of devices, marketing, positioning, the price, and maybe we're ignoring a little bit too much factors that might have a direct or a more direct impact on if people will actually use these devices or not. So how do we build technology? For tech developers, you are probably familiar with the TRL framework. Stands for Technology Readiness Level, where you basically build your product across these different levels, starting from basic research or concept up until mass production. And while this obviously makes a lot of sense, it kind of ignores what I mentioned before. So it kind of ignores these factors that lead to mass adoption. And exactly because of this, some smart people at the US Department of Energy, they have actually extended this TRL framework with the ARL framework, or the Adoption Readiness Level framework. And basically what you do is at each step of development process of your product, you evaluate your tech not only in terms of technology readiness, but also in terms of the value proposition for the end user, market acceptance. So is the market even open to new tech? Is there even a market? Resource maturity, do we have the resources to build this tech further? And license to operate, which is on one hand regulatory aspects, but also public acceptance of this new technology. And when we go back to the PPG example, I think that at least three of these aspects of ARL are checked by three distinctive features of these PPG wearable sensors. First of all, they're embedded in existing platforms, so we wear watches anyways. Then second, what we cannot underestimate is the boost of insights and prediction accuracy that we get due to this large amount of data from endless users, the more people actually use these devices. And finally, because this technology is so widely used, there's no doubt in people's minds whether it's validated in terms of performance and prediction accuracy. Also, there are, for decades, there are studies that show that you actually get quite close to clinical grade heart rate monitoring with these sensors. So with all this, I kind of try to create learnings for us as tech builders. So every time when we think of a new tech and ask ourselves, okay, why hasn't this reached mass adoption, although the tech is so innovative and so cool, we can look at these 3 learnings. And the first one is leverage existing platforms for easier adoption. While for the XR world, this is probably not a huge revelation. You have for years tried to build AR in normal looking glasses. You use people's phones to extend their world. You build smart mirrors. However, for the EXG sensors, this idea is still a bit in its infancy. So only now we start to see actually the EXG sensors being embedded in wearables that we already use, like earbuds, like smart glasses or glasses, watches, textiles, and rings. The second learning is harness big data from the real world. I think this more or less speaks for itself. It's clear that your prediction models will automatically increase in accuracy. The more data you have, especially if it's continuous, contextualized, and rich and diverse data. And finally, building trust by meeting clinical, regulatory, and ethical standards. I think this is obviously very, very crucial for the end user if it's about a device that is worn on the body and that collects personal data. So here are compliance with regulations and laws, early and continuous stakeholder engagement, training and education, as well as transparency, key aspects to consider. To achieve all this, I believe that all the puzzle pieces of or that are involved in building technology have to come together, and that's why I also think that we as component suppliers really see ourselves as partners for our customers to tackle these adoption hurdles as early as possible. So we have built or developed SoftPulse electrodes. These are electrodes that have some distinctive features that differentiate them from other wearable or EXG sensors in the market. They are based on a highly conductive rubber compound, which makes them soft, and you can use them dry, so without any gel. So basically, it leads to comfort, and you can wear them for a long time. And because the rubber is so highly conductive, it also ensures high signal quality. Speaking of signal quality, we also are innovating in ways of minimizing motion artifacts with these sensors, but that's another topic. Our sensors have been tested regarding biocompatibility. So they're safe to use. We do rigorous testing in terms of usage. So I'm talking about heat, sweat exposure, sunlight exposure, and also abrasion. Plus, they are being validated by dozens of research institutes around the globe that are using our SoftPulse electrodes in different kinds of research projects. And finally, they can be integrated in basically every wearable device with whatever connection you can think of. We have our standard electrodes with a standard snap connection. If that doesn't fit, we can just customize electrodes and connections. Two examples here. On the left, the glasses that basically embed EXG sensors that we built together with the ETH in Zurich. And on the right, Wearable earbuds that measure EXG signals. We are also partners in building towards mass production. I think this is also quite unique for us in terms of when we compare ourselves with other biosignal sensor developers. So we have the in-house expertise for simulation, which helps with design questions, fast prototyping, and we are a worldwide big company with really the potential to upscale production to commercial volumes. So with that sales pitch out of the way, let's see what the future holds. And this is, I think, a very, very interesting topic. And this is what I mentioned before briefly, when XR meets EXG. So basically when we start integrating EXG sensors into mixed reality, for example. I mentioned we get advanced insights. We can actually use these sensors as neural interfaces with our extended worlds. And here I have just listed 4 companies and 4 devices that I think are really worth mentioning. It's not a complete list. There are definitely others in that field. But first, Meta with their Orion project. I mentioned it before. So their announcement at the Meta Connect a couple of weeks ago. I know the glasses, they sparked quite some discussion and interest. For me and people in my field, the wristband is obviously the big highlight of this whole platform. So it's basically kind of a big milestone because it's the first time that EMG sensor is thought to be embedded in a really consumer product. And what basically Meta wants to do with that is gesture and motion detection, and apparently they can do that with very high precision. The next one here is Wearable. They built these earbuds. They are customers of us, and I think this is also a very interesting company. They've been around for a couple of years now, and they have been, to my knowledge, one of the first to really use EXG signals as neural interfaces. So you can really think of applications like answering your phone with jaw clenching, moving to or skipping a song in Spotify by moving your eyes, things like that. And then these 2 companies, OpenBCI and Captix, I think they built kind of the integration of EXG sensors into XR in the closest sense, so to say. OpenBCI is Galea. I don't know if you're familiar with them. I know that they have also introduced their product here at AWE a couple of years ago. So basically, it's a headset with an insane amount of sensors, and from what I can tell, also state-of-the-art XR tech. While this is mostly targeted for research for now, I think we will, or this platform will enable a lot of very, very cool insights and applications that can be transferred or translated into more consumer-oriented products. And then Captix, also customers of us, they also offer integration of EXG sensors in different headsets, and they also offer the service of getting the insights from these kinds of data. To sum up, we will see a lot of exciting tech in the near future that combine extended realities with electrophysiological sensors, and that's because, or that's why I think that the future of XR and wearable sensors look very bright. If we keep these learnings and more in mind while building these technologies, I think we will see more products that will reach the masses in the next couple of years. With that, I am finished, and thank you very much for your attention. And I'm open to questions.
Thank you so much, Michel. Is there any question? We'll pass the mic.
Hi, the Orion sensor is on the wrist,
yes.
Right? So,
yes.
But you mentioned they're also doing like mouth stuff too, like chewing and speaking. Where is that coming from?
Sorry, that was maybe a bit confusing. You're right, it's just on the wrist, so it's just EMG. This, what you see here on the right, is just generally what you could also do with EMG. So for example, the Wise-Ear earphones, they actually have algorithms that detect chewing and speaking.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm pretty new to EOG, and I'm not entirely sure what you mean by direction of attention. What is the level of detail that we can get out of this technology? So, like, how does it compare to like gaze direction detection that is based on like machine vision?
Yeah, great question. So from my previous company, we actually did an experiment where we looked at angle detection up to 10 degrees. So if you move your eyes for 10 degrees, you can actually detect that with EOG. That was with very simple machine learning algorithm on very, very few data sets. I'm sure with more data, more sophisticated analysis, you can get quite close to single digit, or definitely single digit angle differences. What obviously will be a challenge is if you just have sensors left and right, you can very well detect left and right movements. Up and down will look quite similar in that signal. So you would have to have sensors that are also placed basically on a vertical scale to detect up and down movements, which, depending on your form factor of the device, is easier or challenging. So if you have earbuds, it will be difficult. If you're thinking about glasses, this should be easier.
And this 10-degree accuracy was in like a lab environment with
lab environment,
like professional
yes. Lab environment,
electrophysiology.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the talk. I'm wondering, can you give us example of customer use cases utilizing EEG?
Yeah, absolutely. So are you familiar with the Neurosity crown, for example? I think that's quite a household name in the neurotech market. I think they have been one of the first ones to develop this EEG headset. They focus on meditation and focus applications. That's one example. Another EEG example. Yeah, I would have to think about that.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, thank you. And as of my state of knowledge right now, we are using those EXG interfaces mainly to read data. Also, are there also approaches to write data? So maybe, let's say, look over there, and it's like moving your eye to look over there, or even the brain-computer interfaces to like render something in your vision?
That's an interesting question. So there are definitely ways of, or technologies, I would say, that use stimulation, electrical stimulation, to change your brain activity, for example. To change your eye movement, I'm not aware. I could also imagine that it's a bit painful, because I think you would have to apply quite some current to your eyes, to the nerves of your eyes. Probably also a bit creepy if your eyes suddenly are moving without you wanting them to. Yeah, it's an interesting question. So for brain stimulation, this is definitely something that is a big topic. Obviously, it's not you apply something and suddenly you have different thoughts or different emotions in your brain, but it's more like a gradual process and maybe more smaller changes that you can achieve. But yeah.
Thank you.
More questions?
I have a similar question. Just to make a point, there was a few years back someone tried to do 3D, free glasses 3D, and what he did, he put actuators which move the eyelids of the user. So he closed one eyes and set the other one open, and then changed each other. But my question is, can we use, because your material is so good at electrical, it can, sorry, my English is not that good.
Oh, good.
Can I do a haptic feedback? It's similar to what he said, but let's say I have a sensor in my arm and I don't want to use an engine or something like that. I can create a small current to actuate a muscle in that area, or the same thing, let's say I put something on the user cheek and then I can make him feel like something is there. Is it possible to use your materials to do that?
In theory, yes. I don't know if you achieve very good haptic feedback with electrical stimulation. I would be more thinking about mechanical stimulation, so really moving the sensors. And we actually, and this is another venture unit within Dätwyler that are basically developing exactly this, also out of conductive rubber, which basically, if you insert a current, it can deform.
Oh, piezoelectric.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think there is time for one more question. Yes.
Hi, thank you for the talk. Continuing the haptics discussion, do you or any of your partners, or not directly haptics centric, are you working with tongue stimulation or tongue-based interaction where you move the tongue in the mouth while you interact with a VR or a headset of any kind?
Not yet, no. Are you thinking about tinnitus application, maybe?
Something like that. So
Okay.
moving the tongue at different points, creating some sort of circuitry, or just moving the tongue up and down the inner part of the...
No, not so far. Generally, I have to say, when it comes to stimulation with dry biosignal sensors, I would be a bit careful to make any claims what we can do. Because with every dry sensor, you will have a higher impedance, so basically the conductivity between the skin and the sensor will be worse than when you apply conductive gel. That's just how it is. You cannot really get around that. So as soon as you apply a lot of current, so a strong electrical signal, you actually want to have a very, very low impedance, because otherwise, first of all, it doesn't do anything, and it can actually harm the user by burning the skin. I mean, it depends on how strong your signal is. So generally, stimulation, I would be a bit careful. In the mouth, where you have saliva and it's basically a wet environment anyways, maybe that's not an issue.
Yeah, you can already create some sort of saltiness and
Yeah.
vinegary effects by just burning or stimulating
Yes.
certain parts of the tongue
Yeah.
anyway, so why not? But yeah, thank you. Excellent talk.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michel, for this really interesting talk. And we are ready for our upcoming session, which